Hey there, welcome to my Spider Solitaire tips and tricks. I made a video similar to this over 10 years ago, but as one of the commenters pointed out, it sounded like I recorded it on a potato, so I'm updating the video. No potatoes this time. Alright, Spider Solitaire can be played on multiple difficulties with 1, 2, and 4 suits of cards. So for the easy and I think on medium, nope, it goes up to hard. So easy and medium are 1 suit, 2 suits go up to hard, 4 suits goes up to expert, master, grandmaster. In this video, I'm going to focus on the expert level using 4 suits, but these tips and tricks apply to all the different levels. It doesn't really matter. On the expert, if you can win 20% of your games, I think you're doing pretty well. I can usually win about 50 to 60% of my games, but I have a lot of experience playing, so that's helpful. So let's click in. Alright, on the game board you have 10 columns. These 4 columns have a visible card and 5 cards underneath. These 6 columns have a visible card and 4 cards underneath. That's a big difference. That means these columns have 25% more cards than these columns. So we're going to focus on these columns over here. It's very important for our strategy. Alright, tip 0. It's not really a tip, but it's the back key. Some people think using the back key is cheating, but it's there in the game to use, so I'm not sure how that's cheating. So the back key is here, the undo key. Let's go click here and then you can undo it. But if you don't know, you can use Control Z to go back. I find it just to be a lot easier. I keep my finger on Control and my other finger on Z, and that way I can zip around. In the videos I put out daily, I do not use the back key, but that's just for clarity for the viewer, not because I wouldn't ever use the back key. But on expert level Spider Solitaire, I do use the back key. So remember, Control Z is your friend. Okay, tip number 1. We want to dig out and empty 2 to 4 columns. And we preferably want to empty these 6 columns over here. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes your deals give you a bunch of kings over here and you just can't do that. You have to work over here. But ideally, this is where we want to work. All right, empty columns means more wins, plain and simple. This is the number 1 most important tip. Empty your columns. All right, if you can empty 2 columns, like 1 of these, 2 of these, I'd estimate you have about a 30 to 40% chance to win the game. If you can empty out 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, then I think your chances go up to about 60 to 70%, is my guess. And if you can empty 4 columns, then you're about 90%. I almost never lose if I can empty 4 columns, okay? So tip number 1 is dig, baby, dig. All right, tip number 2. When we start moving cards around, start with the highest value cards first. So I'm going to go back here. That means I do not want to start putting an ace on a 2 because that locks the 2 in place. Right, the only way that we can remove these kings is by completing a solitaire. And I can't move a king around anywhere in the board. This king by itself is locked in place. It can't go anywhere. But the lower cards are the ones that can move around. So those are the ones that we want to move. And we want to move them last. And the reason why is because if I move this first, then if 3 opens up there, I can't move anything over there, okay? So we want to start with the kings and move the queens on them. Or if I had a jack, move it on to a queen. Then I would go down. Here I don't have anything else until the 9, so I don't want to move the 9 over, okay? So let me back up real quick. Again, we don't want to do the small cards. We want to start with the larger number cards. So I could go over here, move the queen. Just a little preference thing. I don't like to put spades on top of clubs, and I don't like to put diamonds on top of hearts, only because when you get a big stack and it starts compressing, it's really hard to tell the difference between the two. So if I got the choice, I like to go black, red, black, red. Just visually helps me out a little bit. Now, this card may have the better play. There might be a better card underneath. So it just kind of depends. But I don't think I'm going to run with this. So let's move a few cards around just to get the idea. I have 8 here. Got that. Now, remember I told you we want to try to unearth these columns. We want to try to empty these columns here. So I am less likely to want to put an ace over here from a big pile into a smaller pile. Now this pile is now 4, so it's now equal to some of these. But let's take a look at what we got here. I'm going to put this 8 over here. I'm going to still stick with my big cards. And I'm going to put this guy over here. Let's see what we got now. That one matches up there. That one matches up there. That one matches up there. Now we're cooking. All right. Oh, this is going good. All right, let's stick that over there. There. Now here's a heart and a heart. Spade. Spade. If you ever have a king that's sitting by itself with nothing underneath it, that's good. You want to try to keep that. You don't want to have another card on top of it because that locks it in place. You want to be able to move that row around. So I want to try to keep this row clean. So even though that was over there and that's clean, you'll see on a later tip why I want to move this. I want to move this here because if I can start building spades, I want to build spades. That way I can move this king around to another empty column later. And tip 3 is see more cards with an asterisk. Okay, so in almost all card games and board games like Magic the Gathering, Canasta, Dominion, any game that involves cards, there's a strategy called card advantage. And the idea is that the more cards you can see or have, the better odds you have at winning. Now this strat comes with an asterisk because we have to balance seeing more cards with keeping our columns open. Now, technically right now this is an open column. Well, it's not an open column because there's a king locking it down. But if I had like a 4 here or something, that would be what I would consider an open column. All right, and there has to be balance between seeing more cards and keeping your open columns to be able to move cards around. But there's a way to achieve this in my 4th tip. My 4th tip is create a junk pile. So this comes from the idea of like, let's say you moved into a new house and you throw everything in the garage that you want in the garage and it's just a big giant mess in there, right? One approach to fixing that is to move everything into one corner, just shove it all in one corner, and so that the other 3 corners are empty and clean, and then start taking stuff out of the corner and putting it where it belongs. Okay, so this is the same concept. And you can actually create 2 or possibly more junk piles. It depends on what the game gives you. Sometimes the game doesn't give you that. But a junk pile is when you have a column that you pile everything on to get out of the way. And this is best accomplished when it's piled onto a king. So this right here would be the beginning of my junk pile. I have 3 different suits, and ideally I would want to just keep piling stuff onto this column. And since kings can't move around unless they're clean and in an open pile, they're the best choice. And then later when you get a deal on top, you'll get a new number, and then stuff can keep piling onto that, which we'll get to in just a second. I'd look to start a junk pile right after the first deal. So this is the original deal right here, and this is where I'd want to start my junk pile. And this is my junk pile right here. So my junk piles can get pretty huge. So big that I can't even see what's in them sometimes. Like there'll be so many cards piled up on this one pile, and the game will just compress them down. I can't see what's what. I'll have to go in and manually click on the card just to see what all's in there. But that's okay, because with enough empty columns, you can eventually work them out. And that's why we want to open up the columns. All right, and the last tip number 5, count your kings. There are 8 kings in your decks. So you only have 10 columns. So if there were a single king on each of these columns, that would only leave 2 columns available for you to create an empty column, which reduces your odds of winning. Okay, so if you can manage to stack 2 to 3 kings on each other in the same column, so let's say I were dealing, and let's just deal a few out here. So if this king were to fall on here, that would actually be good, because that would mean that there's 2 kings here. That means there's only 6 more in the deck. And so if I can get multiple kings stacked on each other, let's say I had these first 4 rows and there was 2, 2, 2, and 2 kings. That means there's no kings that are in these cards or that are going to come out of the decks onto these. That means I have potential of having all 6 of these columns open up to work with. And I theoretically could turn all 4 of these piles on the left into 4 junk piles just full of kings and other random stuff. And then eventually I would just start unpacking one of these junk piles and moving things over and creating solitaires. So as the game goes, keep track of how many kings you have and where they are. Alright, I've advanced the game a little bit, and here's what I'm going to say. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kings. That means there's 3 left. They're either buried underneath the cards here or they're in the deck here. Okay, I don't know where they're at right now, but I have an open pile here, and this theoretically could become a pile that's movable. I had to stick those on there, but that could get moved around. So the reason why that's relevant is because if I deal out a card here, and let's say a king fell right here on top of this 6, then I would want to use my I would want to move this over here like that and stick it there. Let's say I'm sitting here while I have this set up here. If I'm sitting here with this and I've got an empty spot here, I do not want to move this king over here to the empty spot. In Klondike, you'd want to do that, but on Spider Solitaire, you don't, because that king locks that spot down. Now you can't move anything in and out of that empty column because the king's blocking it. And until you complete an entire solitaire, that king is locked down. So you always want to move a non-king into that spot. And if you have the option, well, in this situation, I'm trying to empty this column, so I'd move that jack. So I don't want to move the king there. I want to move a card that's a smaller number. So something that has play. Ideally, you would want to move something that you have an opportunity to put somewhere else. So let's say if I move the 5 there, I don't know I'm going to get on this deal, but if something lands on it and I can move it off the 5, and let's say there were a 6 here, then that would be a good thing to put there. So I kind of want to put this jack here, because if something's going to land on that, something's going to land on that king. But if I can move the things that are on top of those, then if a queen falls, I can move a queen over, then put the jack on top of it and open that pile back up. Okay. Strategically use the back button to get your new deals to land on kings. All right, and use these 5 tips and tricks, and you'll be a Spider Solitaire pro in no time.